The diplomatic shuttle Harmony's Edge descended through the crystal-clear atmosphere of Zenthara Prime, carrying the first human delegation to ever set foot on the Galactic Council's homeworld. Ambassador Sarah Chen pressed her face against the viewport, watching magnificent spires of living coral stretch toward the purple sky. After 3 centuries of isolation, humanity was finally being invited to join the galactic community. "Remember, maintain protocol at all times," Chen whispered to her small team. "We're representing not just ourselves, but our entire species." Her aide, Marcus Webb, nodded nervously while adjusting his formal diplomatic uniform. Behind them sat Dr. Elena Vasquez, the expedition's xenobiologist, and most importantly, 8-year-old Tommy Chen, Sarah's son and the symbolic representative of humanity's future. The council had specifically requested a child be present during the ceremony. "To show the innocence and potential of your species," the Zenthari ambassador had explained through the translation matrix. Sarah had hesitated, but Tommy had begged to come, his eyes bright with curiosity about aliens and spaceships. How could she deny him this historic moment? The shuttle touched down in the Grand Plaza, a vast expanse of polished stone surrounded by towering structures that seemed to grow rather than be built. Thousands of beings from dozens of species filled the plaza, the crystalline Vorthak clicking their approval, the gas-form ethereals shimmering in their containment suits, and the reptilian saurians standing proud with their scaled heads held high. At the center of it all sat King Zixathera, the supreme ruler of the Galactic Council. The Zenthari monarch stood nearly 12 feet tall, his forearms crossed regally over his barrel chest. His skin was deep blue, marked with intricate silver patterns that indicated his royal bloodline. Multiple eyes, black as the void between stars, gazed down from his elongated skull with what humans might mistake for wisdom, but was actually cold calculation. "Humans," King Zixathera's voice boomed across the plaza through translation devices. "You come before us as supplicants seeking membership in our great civilization. You are young, primitive, confined to a single world, but the Council, in its infinite mercy, considers your application." Sarah stepped forward, her prepared speech ready. But Tommy, overwhelmed by the spectacle, broke from her side and ran toward a group of Zenthari children who had been watching from the crowd. His young mind couldn't comprehend the careful protocols. He only saw other kids he wanted to meet. "Tommy, wait." Sarah called out, but it was too late. The human boy approached the young Zenthari with a wide smile, pulling out a small toy spaceship from his pocket, a gift he'd planned to share. "Hi, I'm Tommy. Want to see my ship? It's like the one we came in." The Zenthari children recoiled in surprise, not from fear but from shock at this breach of protocol. In their society, young ones never spoke before adults, especially during formal ceremonies. But Tommy's innocence and enthusiasm began to win them over. One young Zenthari reached out tentatively to touch the toy. That's when King Zixathera's patience snapped. "Insolent creature," the king roared, rising from his throne. "You dare interrupt sacred proceedings? You dare approach royal offspring without permission?" The plaza fell silent. Every being present turned to watch as the massive ruler strode toward the small human child. Sarah ran forward, but Zenthari guards blocked her path with energy spears. "Your Majesty, please, he's just a child," Sarah pleaded. Silence. King Zixathera towered over Tommy, who looked up with confused eyes, still holding his toy. "You will learn respect? Human spawn." What happened next would echo across the galaxy. The king raised one of his 4 massive hands and brought it down across Tommy's face with enough force to send the 8-year-old flying backward. The slap echoed across the plaza like a thunderclap. Tommy hit the stone floor hard, his toy ship shattering into pieces, a thin line of blood trickling from his split lip. For a moment, the universe held its breath. Sarah's scream of anguish cut through the silence as she broke free from her shock and rushed to her son. Tommy wasn't unconscious, but he was dazed, touching his face with small fingers and looking up at the towering alien who had hurt him. Tears began to flow, not just from pain, but from the confusion of a child who had only wanted to make friends. "Tommy," Sarah gathered her son in her arms, her diplomatic composure completely shattered. "Oh my God, Tommy, are you okay?" King Zixathera looked down at them with satisfaction. "Let this be your first lesson in galactic civilization, humans. Know your place. Your young will learn respect, or they will learn suffering." Dr. Vasquez had gone pale, her scientific instruments recording everything. Marcus Webb was frantically speaking into his communicator, sending an emergency transmission to Earth. The other species in the plaza watched with varying expressions. Some approved of the king's discipline, others looked uncomfortable, but none dared speak against their supreme ruler. "The ceremony is over," King Zixthera declared, turning his back on the humans. "Take these primitives to their quarters. We will deliberate on their worthiness tomorrow." As Sarah helped Tommy to his feet, she looked directly into the king's eyes. Something had changed in her expression. The diplomat was gone, replaced by something far more dangerous. A mother whose child had been harmed. "You made a mistake," she said quietly, her voice carrying clearly across the silent plaza. "A very big mistake." King Zixthera laughed, a sound like grinding metal. "Is that a threat, little human? From a species that hasn't even mastered interstellar travel? What could you possibly do to me?" Sarah didn't answer. She simply lifted Tommy in her arms and walked back toward the shuttle, followed by her team. But as they left the plaza, her aide was already transmitting detailed recordings of the incident to Earth through quantum communication channels. On Earth, in the halls of the Global Defense Council, in the secret facilities hidden beneath mountains and oceans, and in the minds of 7 billion humans who would soon learn what had happened to one of their children, something ancient and terrible began to stir. The king had no idea that in striking a human child, he had just awakened something that had slumbered since humanity's last great war. He had no conception of what humans were capable of when their young were threatened. In exactly 2 hours and 17 minutes, he would begin to understand. The countdown had started. The diplomatic quarters assigned to the human delegation were luxurious by most standards, but they felt like a prison to Sarah Chen. She sat on the edge of the crystalline bed, gently cleaning Tommy's split lip, while her son played quietly with a backup toy from his travel bag. The bruise on his cheek was darkening, a purple mark that made her stomach clench with rage every time she looked at it. "Mommy, why did the big alien hit me?" Tommy asked, his voice small. "I just wanted to share my spaceship." Sarah's hands trembled as she applied the medical gel Dr. Vasquez had given her. How do you explain cruelty to a child? How do you tell an 8-year-old that sometimes adults do terrible things for no good reason? "Some people forget how to be kind, sweetheart," she managed. "But that doesn't mean what happened was your fault. You did nothing wrong." Meanwhile, Marcus Webb was hunched over his communication console, establishing an encrypted link with Earth. His fingers flew over the holographic interface as he uploaded every second of recorded footage from the plaza. The quantum transmission would reach Earth in minutes, despite the vast distance between worlds. Dr. Vasquez was running medical scans on Tommy, her face grim. No concussion, thankfully. But Sarah, that wasn't just a slap. The force readings I recorded, King Zixthera hit him with enough power to seriously injure an adult human. If Tommy had been standing at a different angle or if he was smaller, she didn't need to finish the sentence. Sarah's training as a diplomat told her to file complaints through proper channels, to work within the galactic legal system. But her instincts as a mother were screaming for justice. On Earth, the transmission from Zixthera Prime arrived at the Global Defense Council headquarters. Buried deep beneath the Swiss Alps, General Harrison Mitchell was reviewing fleet readiness. Reports when his aide burst into his office without knocking, a breach of protocol that immediately put him on high alert. "Sir, you need to see this. Priority Alpha transmission from the diplomatic mission." Mitchell's weathered face grew darker with each second of footage he watched. The career military officer had seen war, had made the hard decisions that kept humanity safe. But watching an alien monarch strike a human child filled him with a cold fury he hadn't felt since the resource wars. "Get me President Nakamura, now." He paused the recording on an image of Tommy's confused, tear-streaked face, and activate Protocol 7. Protocol 7 hadn't been mentioned in public for over 50 years. It was humanity's most closely guarded secret, developed during the darkest days of the 22nd century, when Earth had nearly destroyed itself. The project had consumed the resources of entire nations and represented the absolute pinnacle of human military engineering. Within minutes, President Nakamura's hologram appeared in Mitchell's office. The Japanese leader's normally calm demeanor cracked as she watched the footage. "How long until our response is ready?" she asked without preamble. "Fleet 7 has been on standby since the diplomatic mission departed," Mitchell replied. Admiral Chen can have them moving within the hour. Admiral Chen? The president's eyebrows rose. Related to our ambassador? Her brother? And Tommy's uncle? A ghost of a smile crossed the president's lips. I see. Then I suppose we don't need to worry about his motivation. She paused, considering the ramifications. General, you understand what this means? We're about to announce humanity's presence to the galaxy in a way that will change everything. Yes, ma'am. But that alien laid hands on one of our children. That cannot stand, the president nodded slowly. Agreed, authorize Protocol 7, and General, make sure they understand the lesson. As the transmission ended, alarms began blaring throughout the hidden facility. Personnel who had spent years training for a war they hoped would never come rushed to their stations. In launching bays carved into the Earth's crust, massive ships began powering up systems that defied conventional physics. Light years away, in the royal palace of Xanthera Prime, King Zixthara was enjoying an elaborate feast to celebrate what he saw as humanity's proper humbling. The great hall was filled with nobles from across the galaxy, all praising his decisive action in putting the upstart humans in their place. You showed remarkable restraint. Your Majesty, fawned Chancellor Mordock, a reptilian saurian whose family had served the crown for generations. Lesser rulers might have executed the child for such insolence. King Zixthara laughed, raising a goblet of fermented starfruit wine. The humans needed to understand the natural order. They are newcomers, primitives who barely understand space travel. They must learn to respect their betters. Around the table, various alien dignitaries nodded in agreement. The crystalline Vorthak chimed their approval, while the gas-form ethereals shimmered in satisfaction within their containment suits. Only a few beings looked uncomfortable, but they kept their thoughts to themselves. Perhaps, suggested Lady Zelandra, a Xanthari noble with particularly intricate silver markings, we should reject their application entirely. If they cannot control their young, how can they be trusted with membership in the council? An excellent point, the king agreed. We shall announce our decision tomorrow. The humans will return to their little world, properly educated about their place in the galactic hierarchy. As the feast continued, none of the assembled dignitaries noticed the faint readings appearing on the long-range sensors. Deep space monitoring stations detected anomalous energy signatures moving at impossible speeds towards Xanthari space, but the technicians dismissed them as sensor glitches. After all, no known technology could move that fast. Back in the diplomatic quarters, Sarah was finally getting Tommy to sleep when her communicator chimed softly. She opened the channel to find her brother's face looking back at her. Sarah, are you and Tommy safe? Admiral David Chen's voice was tight with controlled anger. We're fine, Dave, but they hurt him. That bastard hurt my little boy. I know. I've seen the footage. David's jaw clenched. Listen to me carefully. In approximately 1 hour and 40 minutes, I need you and your team to be aboard your shuttle, and at minimum safe distance from Xanthara Prime. Can you do that without raising suspicions? Sarah's diplomatic training kicked in. David, what are you planning? We can't risk an incident that might... Sarah. Her brother's voice cut through her protest with military authority. That alien put his hands on my nephew. On our family. He's going to learn that was a mistake. Through the crystal windows of their quarters, the first stars were becoming visible as Xanthara Prime's sun set. Beautiful, peaceful, eternal stars that had watched over countless civilizations. Soon they would witness something new. The awakening of humanity's true power. Deep in the void between star systems, something impossible was happening. Space itself seemed to ripple and tear as massive shapes emerged from what appeared to be nothing. The human fleet materialized in perfect formation. 12 vessels that shouldn't exist according to any known physics. Admiral David Chen stood on the bridge of the flagship Retribution, watching his tactical display with cold satisfaction. Each ship in his fleet was a masterpiece of human engineering, built with technology that had been theoretical just decades ago. They called them ghost ships, vessels that could phase between dimensions,
moving faster than light without using conventional faster-than-light drives. Admiral?
We've completed translation, reported Commander Sarah Kim, his tactical officer. All ships are showing green across the board. We're approximately 3 light hours from Xanthara Prime. David nodded, his eyes fixed on the distant glow of the Xanthari home system. Time to target? At current phase velocity, 17 minutes, sir. 17 minutes to reach a target 3 light hours away. The implications were staggering, but David felt no pride in humanity's technological achievement right now. All he could think about was the footage of his nephew being struck by an alien tyrant. Open a channel to all ships, he ordered. The faces of 11 other ship captains appeared on his screen, the best officers humanity had ever produced, each commanding vessels that represented years of secret development. They all wore the same expression, he felt, barely contained fury. "You've all seen what happened to my nephew," David began without preamble. "But this isn't about family revenge. This is about sending a message that will echo across the galaxy for the next 1,000 years. No one, no alien king, no galactic council, no superior species, touches a human child and walks away." Captain Martinez of the Vengeance leaned forward. "What are our rules of engagement, sir?" "Precise and overwhelming. We're not here to conquer or to start a galactic war. We're here to eliminate King Zixithera and everyone who shares his bloodline. Complete genetic termination of his family line, as per Protocol 7 guidelines." The captains nodded grimly. Protocol 7 had been designed for exactly this scenario, a response so swift and devastating that it would serve as a permanent deterrent to anyone who might think humanity was weak. "Intelligence reports indicate the king has 47 direct descendants scattered across 6 worlds," continued David. "Extended bloodline includes 238 individuals. All will be eliminated simultaneously to prevent any possibility of revenge or succession conflicts." Commander Kim looked up from her console. "Admiral, we're receiving a priority transmission from the diplomatic quarters on Xanthera Prime." David's expression softened slightly. "Sarah?" His sister's face appeared on screen, and he could see Tommy sleeping peacefully in the background. "Dave, whatever you're planning, please tell me you're not going to start a war over this." "No war, Sarah, just justice." "Are you ready to leave?" "We're aboard the shuttle now. Marcus managed to convince the Xanthari that we wanted to get an early start on tomorrow's ceremonies." She paused. "David, how many ships do you have out there?" "Enough." He checked his chronometer. "You have 15 minutes to reach minimum safe distance. Get Tommy out of there." As the transmission ended, David turned his attention back to his fleet. The ghost ships were already beginning their final approach, phasing in and out of normal space to avoid detection by Xanthari sensors. The enemy wouldn't know they were coming until it was far too late. On Xanthera Prime, the royal palace was settling into its evening routine. King Zixithera had retired to his private chambers, satisfied with the day's events. Around the galaxy, his family members went about their normal lives, unaware that death was approaching at speeds that defied comprehension. The king's eldest son, Prince Vexithera, was reviewing trade negotiations with the Vorthak Consortium on the industrial world of Kepler 442b. The king's daughter, Princess Zalthara, was attending a cultural exchange on the resort planet of New Atlantis. His younger brother, Duke Kixthara, was leading a hunting expedition on the game preserve world of Targon 3. None of them knew that human ships were already in their star systems, ghost-like predators preparing to strike. "Sir, all targets have been acquired," reported Commander Kim. "Fleet 7 has confirmed locks on all primary and secondary targets across 6 systems." David took a deep breath. In his decades of military service, he had never given an order like this. But when he closed his eyes, he saw Tommy's confused face, the blood on his small lip, the tears of a child who had only wanted to make friends. "All ships," he announced. "This is Admiral Chen. You are cleared to engage. Show them what happens when someone hurts our children." The first phase of the assault began with surgical precision. On 6 worlds scattered across Xanthari space, human ships materialized in perfect synchronization. The ghost ships' advanced cloaking kept them invisible to most sensors until they were practically on top of their targets. Prince Vexithara was in his office when the wall simply ceased to exist. One moment he was reading reports, the next he was staring at the business end of a human plasma cannon. He had time for one shocked intake of breath before the weapon fired. Princess Zalthara was enjoying an evening meal when the restaurant's roof disappeared. She looked up to see a sleek black ship hovering silently above, its weapons already charging. The last thing she saw was a brief flash of light. Duke Kixthera's hunting lodge was vaporized so quickly that he never knew what happened. One instant he was boasting to his companions about the day's kills, the next he simply wasn't. Across 6 star systems, the story repeated itself 47 times. Each death was quick, precise, and final. The human ships struck like vengeful spirits, appearing just long enough to eliminate their targets before vanishing back into the void. King Zixthara was awakened by alarms blaring throughout the palace. He stumbled from his bed, his forearms reaching for weapons that wouldn't save him, as his communication console lit up with panicked reports from across the galaxy. "Your Majesty, Prince Vexithara is gone. The entire trade delegation was destroyed. Princess Zalthara's ship has been vaporized. Duke Quixthera's hunting lodge. There's nothing left." The king's multiple eyes widened in horror as report after report confirmed the impossible. His entire bloodline was being systematically erased, and he had no idea how or by whom. That's when his palace's defensive sensors finally detected the 12 ships materializing in Xanthera Prime's atmosphere. The ghost ships dropped their cloaking simultaneously, revealing themselves in all their terrifying glory. King Zixithara stared at the main display in his throne room, watching as the human fleet arranged itself in perfect formation above his palace. Each ship was a masterpiece of predatory design, all sharp angles and weapon emplacements that spoke of devastating purpose. His communication console chimed with an incoming transmission. King Zixithara activated it with trembling hands, and Admiral David Chen's face appeared on the screen. "Your Majesty," David said with cold formality, "my name is Admiral Chen of the Human Defense Fleet. You struck my nephew approximately 2 hours ago." "Did you think there would be no consequences?" The king's voice came out as a hoarse whisper. "This is impossible. Humans don't have this technology. You're primitives." David's smile was sharper than any blade. "We let you think that, right up until you made the mistake of laying hands on one of our children." The display behind the king lit up with tactical information, coordinates, and timestamps showing the simultaneous destruction of his entire bloodline across 6 star systems. The precision was terrifying, the speed incomprehensible. "You have 3 minutes to make peace with whatever gods you worship," David continued. "Then you're going to join your family." King Zixthara's legs gave out beneath him as the reality of his situation crashed down. His entire bloodline, centuries of royal heritage, dozens of heirs, the future of his dynasty, had been erased in minutes by a species he had dismissed as primitive. The irony was crushing. "Wait," he gasped into the communicator, his forearms gesturing frantically. "Please, I beg you. This is madness."
One child's punishment doesn't warrant genocide.
Admiral Chen's expression remained unchanged, carved from ice and fury. "You're right. It doesn't warrant genocide. That's why we're not killing your entire species, just you and everyone who shares your genes." In the background of the transmission, the king could see human officers working with mechanical efficiency at their stations. No rage, no passion, just cold professionalism, as they prepared to end a royal lineage that had ruled for 3,000 years. "I'll make reparations," the king pleaded. "Credits, territory, trade agreements. Name your price." "The price," David replied quietly, "was not striking a human child. You failed to pay it." Across the galaxy, news of the attacks was spreading like wildfire through communication networks. The crystalline Vorthok were chittering in panic as they received reports of impossible human technology. The gas-form ethereals were condensing in shock within their containment suits. Every species that had witnessed the afternoon's ceremony was now scrambling to understand how the supposedly primitive humans had demonstrated such devastating military capability on the bridge of the Retribution. Commander Kim looked up from her tactical display. "Sir, we're receiving communication requests from 17 different planetary governments. The Saurian High Command is demanding to know what's happening. The Ethereal Collective is calling for emergency council sessions." David didn't take his eyes off King Zixthara's terrified face. "Tell them they'll understand soon enough. Right now we have business to finish." The king was hyperventilating, his blue skin turning pale. "You don't understand the consequences of this action. The Galactic Council will unite against you. Every species in the galaxy will see you as a threat." "Good," David replied. "Maybe they'll think twice before touching our children." In the royal throne room, panic was spreading among the palace staff. Xanthari nobles and servants fled through corridors as the building's automated defenses tried futilely to lock onto the human ships. The ghost ships' phase technology made them nearly impossible to target. They existed in normal space just long enough to attack. then shifted back into dimensional flux where conventional weapons couldn't reach them. King Zixthera stumbled toward his emergency bunker, but Admiral Chen's voice stopped him. "I wouldn't bother with the bunker, Your Majesty. Our weapons can phase through your shields. There's nowhere to run." The king collapsed onto his throne, the weight of absolute defeat crushing his spirit. "Why?" he whispered. "Why destroy everything for one moment of discipline?" The child was disrespectful. "In our culture—" "In your culture," David interrupted. "You hit children who aren't even your own. In our culture, we protect our young above all else. Every human child is precious to us. Everyone is defended by the full might of our species." Through the palace's crystal windows, the king could see human ships repositioning themselves. Their weapons were charging, energy readings climbing to levels that would reduce the entire structure to atoms. Meanwhile, Sarah Chen's diplomatic shuttle was racing away from Xanthera Prime at maximum speed. Tommy had woken up and was pressed against a viewport, watching the distant lights of the human fleet with wide eyes. "Mommy, are those Uncle David's ships?" he asked innocently. Sarah nodded, her own eyes fixed on the tactical display showing her brother's fleet. "Yes, sweetheart. Uncle David came to make sure you're safe. Is he going to hurt the mean alien who hit me?" The question hung in the air as Sarah struggled with how to explain justice and vengeance to an 8-year-old. Finally, she settled on the truth. Simplified. Sometimes when someone hurts a child, the grown-ups have to make sure it never happens again. Dr. Vasquez looked up from monitoring Tommy's medical readings. "Sarah, the energy signatures I'm detecting from those ships. It's unlike anything in our databases. How long has humanity been developing this technology?" "Since the resource wars," Sarah replied quietly. "After we nearly destroyed ourselves, the Global Council decided we needed a way to protect our species from any threat, internal or external. Project Nemesis has been running for over 70 years. Marcus Webb was frantically updating his reports to Earth, documenting everything for historical record. The implications are staggering. Every first contact protocol we've developed assumes technological parity or disadvantage. We've never planned for revealing superior capabilities like this." Back on the Retribution, Admiral Chen checked his chronometer. 2 minutes remaining. "Your Majesty, do you have any final words?" King Zixithera lifted his head, and for a moment his ancient pride reasserted itself. "You think you're the heroes of this story? You've just painted a target on every human in the galaxy. When word spreads of what you're capable of, every species will fear you. Fear leads to alliance, and alliance leads to war. You may win today, but you've doomed your entire race to conflict." David considered this for a moment. "Maybe. But every parent in the galaxy will also know that if they harm a human child, their entire bloodline will pay the price. Some lessons are worth the cost." The king's shoulders slumped. "At least tell me, how did you develop such technology in isolation? Our scouts reported that you barely had interplanetary travel. We let your scouts see what we wanted them to see," David replied. "Did you really think a species that survived the resource wars, that built a unified global government from the ashes of near extinction, that sent explorers to other star systems, would do all that without also preparing for threats we might encounter? But the energy requirements alone, the physics involved. We're very good at solving problems when our survival depends on it, and even better at hiding our solutions until they're needed." On dozens of worlds across Xanthari space, alien governments were receiving the same message simultaneously. It was broadcasting on all frequencies in all languages impossible to ignore or suppress. "This is Admiral David Chen of the Human Defense Fleet," the message began. 2 hours ago, King Zixthara of the Xanthari Empire struck a human child during diplomatic proceedings. We consider this an act of war against humanity. King Zixithera and his entire bloodline have been terminated in response. Let this serve as notice to all species. Humanity protects its young above all else. Any being who harms a human child will face the full consequences of that action. The message was accompanied by tactical footage of the ghost ships in action, brief glimpses of technology that defied understanding, weapons that could phase through any defense, ships that moved faster than should be possible. Across the galaxy, military leaders were calling emergency sessions. Xenobiologists were revising their assessments of human capabilities. Diplomatic corps were drafting new contact protocols, and on Xanthera Prime, King Zixthara closed his eyes and waited for the end. "Time," announced Commander Kim. Admiral David Chen looked at the alien monarch who had made the fatal mistake of striking his nephew. Your Majesty, thank you for teaching the galaxy an important lesson about humanity. Your sacrifice will not be forgotten. He nodded to his weapons officer. Fire. The throne room of Zenthara Prime disappeared in a flash of silver light. The royal palace of Zenthara Prime simply ceased to exist. Where moments before had stood a magnificent structure of living coral and crystal that had housed 3 millennia of royal history, there was now only a perfectly circular crater of glass. The human weapons had been so precise that buildings just meters away from the palace remained untouched, their windows reflecting the fading glow of annihilation. Admiral David Chen watched the tactical display confirm the target's destruction. All fleet units report status. Vengeance. Confirms elimination of secondary targets on Kepler 442b. Justice. Reports clean termination of targets on New Atlantis. Retribution class. Vessels across all 6 systems confirm mission completion. 0 survivors from the royal bloodline. David nodded slowly. In less than 30 minutes, humanity had reached across multiple star systems and erased an entire dynasty with surgical precision. The galaxy would remember this day. Sir, Commander Kim reported, we're receiving priority transmissions from every major government in the local sector. The Saurian High Command is demanding immediate explanations. The Vorthak Consortium is calling for emergency trade negotiations. And the Ethereal Collective? She paused, looking puzzled. The Ethereal Collective is requesting formal diplomatic recognition of human territorial sovereignty. Smart of them, David replied. Open a channel to all requesting parties. Time to address the galaxy. As communication links established across dozens of worlds, David found himself speaking to more alien species than any human in history. The holographic display showed a crowd of faces. Reptilian saurians with their scaled features twisted in concern. Crystalline Vorthak refracting light as they chittered nervously. Gas-form ethereals condensing into worried patterns within their containment suits. I'm Admiral David Chen, Commanding Officer of the Human Defense Fleet, he began. I'm sure you all have questions about recent events. Supreme Commander Torgon of the Saurian military leaned forward aggressively. You have committed an act of unprovoked warfare against a sovereign ruler. The Galactic Council will... The Galactic Council, David interrupted calmly, is welcome to lodge complaints through proper diplomatic channels. King Zixithara struck a human child during what was supposed to be a peaceful ceremony. We responded appropriately. Appropriately? The crystalline form of First Mind Karzek of the Vorthak chimed in disbelief. You eliminated an entire bloodline. Hundreds of beings. 247 beings, David corrected. We counted carefully. And yes, we eliminated every one of them. Do you know why? The alien leaders waited in tense silence. Because in human culture, children are sacred. Not just our own children, but the concept of childhood itself. When someone harms a child, any child, they demonstrate that they pose a fundamental threat to the future of all species. Such individuals cannot be allowed to continue existing. Ethereal prime consciousness. Velenth shimmered nervously in its containment field. But the technological capabilities you've demonstrated? How long have humans possessed such weapons? David smiled coldly. Long enough. The real question is, what are you going to do with this knowledge? The communications channel fell silent as alien leaders processed the implications. Humanity had been content to appear weak, to let other species believe they were primitive newcomers to the galactic stage. The fact that they had hidden such devastating military capability suggested a level of strategic thinking that was deeply unsettling. Are you threatening us? Supreme Commander Torgon demanded. I'm educating you, David replied. Humanity seeks peaceful coexistence with all species. We're explorers, scientists, diplomats. But we are also parents. Every human child is precious to us, defended by every adult in our species. Today's demonstration ensures that no one will mistake our peaceful nature for weakness. On the bridge of the Retribution, David received a priority transmission from his sister's shuttle. Sarah's face appeared on his personal comm screen, with Tommy visible in the background playing with a new toy Dr. Vasquez had given him. David, please tell me you're done, Sarah said quietly. Mission accomplished, he confirmed. King Zixithara and his bloodline are extinct. The message has been delivered. And the political consequences? David glanced at his tactical display, where dozens of alien ships were approaching from various directions. not attacking but investigating. I think we're about to find out. Tommy looked up from his toy and ran to the communication console. Uncle David! Did you get the bat alien? David's expression softened immediately. Hey there, buddy. How are you feeling? My face still hurts a little, but Dr. Vasquez gave me special medicine. Tommy replied cheerfully, seemingly unaware that his uncle had just reshaped galactic politics. Are the other aliens nicer than the mean one? We're about to find out, David said gently. But don't worry, no one's going to hurt you again. As Tommy returned to his toys, Sarah moved closer to the comm screen. The galaxy is going to change because of this, isn't it? It was going to change anyway, David replied. Humanity was always going to reveal our true capabilities eventually. At least this way, we've established the rules clearly from the beginning. The first alien ship to arrive was a Vorthak diplomatic vessel, its crystalline hull chiming a complex harmony that their translators interpreted as peaceful intentions. Behind it came a fleet of Saurian warships, not threatening but making a statement about their military presence. Sir, Commander Kim reported, the Vorthak ship is requesting permission to approach. They're claiming diplomatic immunity and offering formal negotiations. Grant them approach permission, David ordered, and signal the Saurian fleet that any aggressive action will be met with immediate retaliation. The Vorthak diplomatic ship Crystal Harmony docked with the Retribution using standard galactic protocols. Within minutes, a delegation of crystalline beings was aboard the human flagship, their forms chiming nervously as they took in the advanced technology surrounding them. First Mind Karzek spoke through harmonic translation. Admiral Chen, we come seeking understanding. The Vorthak Consortium has reviewed your actions and finds them comprehensible under your stated cultural parameters. David raised an eyebrow. Comprehensible? Your species prioritizes the protection of offspring. This is not unusual among sapient races. What is unusual is your capability to enforce this priority across interstellar distances with such efficiency. The crystalline being paused, light refracting through its form as it considered its words. We wish to establish formal relations with humanity, with full recognition of your territorial sovereignty and defensive capabilities. That sounds reasonable, David replied. What are your terms? We propose a mutual non-aggression pact, with special provisions regarding the protection of young beings of all species. In exchange, we offer full access to Vorthak trade networks and technological exchanges. David glanced at his tactical officer. This was moving faster than anyone had anticipated. The galaxy wasn't responding with fear and hostility. They were responding with respect and diplomatic overtures. I'll need to consult with my government, David said carefully, but I believe humanity would be interested in such an arrangement. As the Vorthak delegation continued their discussions, similar conversations were taking place across the fleet. Ethereal representatives were proposing scientific collaboration. Even some Saurian commanders were reaching out with offers of military cooperation against common threats. The galaxy had learned a crucial lesson in less than 3 hours. Humanity was not the weak newcomer they had appeared to be. More importantly, they had learned that humans would go to extraordinary lengths to protect their children, and that lesson was reshaping the entire political landscape of known space. On Earth, President Nakamura was receiving constant updates from the Global Defense Council. Status report, General Mitchell. Mission successful, Madam President. 0 casualties on our side. Complete elimination of primary targets. Admiral Chen reports that initial alien responses are surprisingly positive. Positive? We just announced our presence by committing what amounts to regicide. Yes, ma'am. But apparently, most species view the protection of young as a fundamental biological imperative. Our response, while extreme by diplomatic standards, makes perfect sense to them from an evolutionary perspective. The president leaned back in her chair, processing the implications. So by demonstrating that we'll go to any lengths to protect human children, we've actually gained respect rather than fear. It appears so, at least from the more intelligent species. They're treating us as equals now, rather than primitives to be patronized. As reports continued to flow in from across the galaxy, it became clear that humanity had achieved something unprecedented. In a single decisive action, they had transformed themselves from supplicants seeking membership in galactic civilization to a major power that other species needed to take seriously. All because someone had made the mistake of slapping a human child. The message would echo across the galaxy for generations. Humanity protects its young, and the consequences of harming them are absolute. 3 weeks after the elimination of King Zixthera's bloodline, the galaxy had settled into a new order. The emergency session of the Galactic Council was taking place on the neutral world of Concordia, a planet specifically designed for interspecies diplomacy. Representatives from 237 different civilizations had gathered to address what historians were already calling the human revelation. Ambassador Sarah Chen sat at the diplomatic table that had been hastily designated for humanity, her credentials as the first human to officially address the council, lending her unprecedented authority. Tommy was back on Earth, safely attending school and playing with friends who had no idea their classmate had inadvertently triggered a galactic political revolution. The Great Assembly hall buzzed with thousands of different forms of communication, harmonic chimes from the Vorthak, subsonic rumbles from the Saurians, electromagnetic pulses from the Ethereals, and dozens of other methods that the universal translators worked frantically to convert into coherent meaning. Supreme Arbiter Velthak, an ancient ethereal who had presided over the council for over 2 centuries, called for order. The massive gas form being condensed into a pillar of shimmering light as its translated voice filled the chamber. We are gathered to address the unprecedented actions taken by the human species against the Zinthari Empire. The facts are not in dispute. King Zixthera struck a human child. Humanity responded by eliminating the king's entire bloodline across 6 star systems in less than 30 minutes. The question before us is how to proceed. A chorus of voices erupted from the assembly. Some demanded justice for what they called an act of genocide. Others praised humanity's swift defense of their young. The Zenthari delegation, now led by the dead king's cousin Duke Malthara, called for immediate sanctions against Earth. The humans must be held accountable, Duke Malthara declared, his blue skin flushed with anger. They have destroyed thousands of years of royal heritage over a moment of discipline. Their response was completely disproportionate. Sarah Chen rose to address the council, her diplomatic training serving her well despite the unprecedented situation. Honored members of the council, I speak for all humanity when I say that we deeply regret the necessity of our actions. However, we do not apologize for defending our children. The chamber fell silent as translators processed her words. In human culture, she continued, children are not the property of adults to be disciplined at will. They are individuals deserving of protection and respect. When King Zixthera struck my son, he committed an act of violence against a defenseless child. By our laws and our values, this demanded a response. Supreme Commander Torgan of the Saurian military leaned forward aggressively. Your response eliminated nearly 300 beings. How is this justice? Because, Sarah replied calmly, King Zixthera's action demonstrated a fundamental incompatibility between his values and ours. Someone willing to strike a child for the crime of wanting to make friends is someone who views violence as an acceptable solution to minor problems. Such individuals are inherently dangerous to all peaceful beings. First Mind Karzik of the Vorthok Consortium chimed in support. The humans have a point. Analysis of King Zixthera's historical actions shows a pattern of using violence to solve diplomatic problems. Perhaps this outcome was inevitable. The method was unprecedented, added ethereal prime consciousness Velenth, but the reasoning is evolutionarily sound. All sapient species prioritize the protection of their offspring. The humans simply have more effective means of enforcement. Duke Malthara's voice rose to a shout. They have revealed technological capabilities that they deliberately concealed. They made us all believe they were primitives while hiding weapons that can phase through any defense. How can we trust anything they say? This was the crux of the matter, and Sarah knew it. Humanity's revelation of advanced technology had shaken the foundations of galactic politics. Every species was now wondering what other primitive civilizations might be hiding similar capabilities. We concealed our military technology, Sarah admitted, because we hoped never to use it. Humanity spent 3 centuries rebuilding our world after we nearly destroyed ourselves in civil war. We learned that true strength comes from restraint, not aggression. We developed these weapons as a last resort, praying they would never be necessary. But you were willing to use them, observed Ancient Mind Korthel of the Elder Council, one of the oldest beings in known space. That suggests a capacity for violence that concerns many of us. Sarah met the ancient being's gaze steadily. Yes, we are capable of violence. Terrible, absolute violence when necessary. But we are also capable of choosing not to use that violence. For 3 centuries, humanity lived in peace, exploring space, developing art and science, raising our children in safety. We only revealed our weapons when someone threatened what we value most. The debate continued for hours, with various species arguing for different approaches to the human problem. Some wanted economic sanctions, others proposed military containment. A few suggested diplomatic isolation until humanity proved they could be trusted. It was the representative of the Catherian collective who provided the breakthrough. The insectoid beings communicated through pheromone clouds that the translators rendered as formal, precise language. The Catherians have analyzed human behavioral patterns across their recorded history. The representative buzzed. We find consistent evidence of protective aggression directed solely at threats to their offspring or their species' survival. They do not initiate conflicts for territorial gain, resource acquisition, or ideological dominance. Their violence is reactive and defensive in nature. Furthermore, the Catherian continued, their response to King Zixathera's aggression was precisely calibrated. They eliminated only the royal bloodline, avoiding civilian casualties and minimizing collateral damage. This suggests remarkable restraint for beings capable of such destructive power. Supreme Arbiter Veldthak condensed further, indicating deep thought. The Catherian analysis raises an important point. If humanity's violence is purely defensive, triggered only by threats to their young, then the solution is simple. Don't threaten their young. But the precedent, Duke Malthara began. The precedent, the Arbiter interrupted, is that actions have consequences. King Zixathera chose to strike a child during a diplomatic ceremony. Humanity chose to respond with overwhelming force. Both choices were made freely and both carried risks. A new voice entered the debate. Controller Prime Zexand of the Mechanist Union, beings who had replaced most of their biological components with technological enhancements. The Mechanists propose a different perspective. Humanity has demonstrated superior technology, precise military capability, and predictable behavioral patterns. From an efficiency standpoint, they would make valuable allies rather than dangerous enemies. This sparked a new round of discussions as species began considering the benefits of human partnership rather than punishment. The Vorthak Consortium offered trade agreements that would give humanity access to exotic materials. The Ethereal Collective proposed scientific collaboration on interdimensional research. Even some Saurian factions began discussing military cooperation against common threats like pirates and rogue AI systems. As the debate continued, Sarah realized that humanity had achieved something remarkable. Instead of being dismissed as primitives or feared as aggressors, they were being courted as equals. The revelation of their true capabilities had earned them respect, and their restraint in using those capabilities had earned them trust. Finally, Supreme Arbiter Veldthak called for a vote. The Council will now decide humanity's status. We have 3 options: punitive sanctions for their actions against the Zinthari Empire, immediate full membership with all associated rights and responsibilities, or provisional membership with a probationary period. The vote was closer than Sarah had expected, but the result was clear. Humanity was granted immediate full membership in the Galactic Council, with the explicit understanding that they would help establish new protocols for protecting the young of all species. Duke Malthara stormed out of the chamber, refusing to accept the decision. But even among the remaining Zenthari delegation, there were those who approached Sarah with offers of reconciliation. Your Majesty was a tyrant, one Zenthari noble admitted quietly. Many of us are relieved that his bloodline has ended. Perhaps this is an opportunity for our people to choose better leaders. As the council session ended, Sarah reflected on the strange path that had led humanity to this point. A single moment of violence against a child had revealed their true nature to the galaxy. They were protectors, guardians willing to go to any lengths to defend the innocent. And now the galaxy knew it. The message was clear and would echo through space for millennia. Humanity's children were under the protection of the most advanced military force in known space. Anyone who harmed them would face consequences beyond imagination. It was a lesson King Zixathera had learned too late, but one that would prevent countless future tragedies. In the end, Tommy's tears had changed the fate of the galaxy. 5 years after the Xanthari incident, as historians now called it, the galaxy had transformed in ways no one could have predicted. The human embassy on Concordia had become one of the most influential diplomatic centers in known space, not because humanity demanded power, but because other species consistently sought their guidance on matters involving the protection of young beings. Ambassador Sarah Chen, now bearing the title of Galactic Child Welfare Advocate, sat in her office reviewing the latest reports. The position had been created specifically for her by unanimous council vote, recognizing humanity's unique commitment to protecting children of all species. Her work had prevented dozens of potential conflicts and had fundamentally changed how civilizations treated their young. Tommy, now 13 and attending the prestigious Concordia International School, alongside young beings from dozens of different species, had no memory of being the catalyst for galactic change. To him, the aliens he studied with were simply friends with interesting biology and different customs. His closest companion was Zilith, a young Xanthari whose family had fled the civil war that erupted after King Zixthara's death. "Mom, can Zil come over for dinner tonight?" Tommy asked, bursting into Sarah's office with the casual energy of a teenager. "We're working on a project about pre-contact human culture and she wants to try pizza." Sarah smiled, marveling at how normal this request seemed despite its historical impossibility just years ago. "Of course. But remember, Xanthari digestive systems can't handle too much cheese. I know, Dr. Vasquez already gave me the approved recipe." Tommy paused at the door. "Oh, and Mr. Karzik wants to know if you can speak to his honors class about the Universal Child Protection Protocols next week." After Tommy left, Sarah turned back to her reports. The Universal Child Protection Protocols, drafted jointly by human and alien legal experts, had become the foundation of interspecies law. Any being who harmed a child of any species now faced swift justice, though thankfully not as absolute as King Zixthara had received. Her communicator chimed with an incoming priority transmission. Admiral David Chen's face appeared on her screen, though he now bore the title of Galactic Peace Enforcement Coordinator. "Sarah, we have a situation developing in the Outer Rim. The hegemony of Brass has been using child labor in their mining operations. 3 different species have filed formal complaints." Sarah's expression hardened. The hegemony was a relatively new member of the council, a confederation of machine-based intelligences who claimed they didn't understand biological concepts like childhood. It was a claim that wore thinner each time they violated protection protocols. "What's the current diplomatic status?" she asked. "The Ethereal Collective has offered to mediate, but the hegemony is refusing negotiations. They claim that economic necessity overrides welfare concerns." Sarah felt the familiar surge of protective anger that had driven humanity's actions 5 years ago. "David, please tell me you're not planning to eliminate an entire species over this." "The new protocols allow for graduated responses," David replied carefully. "We're implementing economic sanctions first, backed by a show of force. Admiral Martinez is taking a patrol fleet to the hegemony border." The evolution of human military doctrine had been one of the most interesting developments since the Xanthari incident. Instead of hiding their capabilities, humanity now openly maintained the most advanced fleet in the galaxy, but they used it primarily for peacekeeping and protection missions. The mere presence of human ships was often enough to resolve conflicts before they escalated. "Keep me informed," Sarah said. "And David? Make sure they understand this is their only warning." As the transmission ended, Sarah reflected on how much had changed. Humanity had gone from hopeful newcomers to galactic superpowers in a matter of years, all because they had refused to accept that violence against children was normal or acceptable. The transformation hadn't been without costs. Earth was now the target of constant espionage attempts as other species tried to understand human technology. Several radical factions across the galaxy viewed humanity as an existential threat that needed to be eliminated, and there were philosophical debates about whether humanity's approach to justice was too absolute. But the benefits were undeniable. Child mortality rates had dropped across all member species as governments implemented better protection policies. Educational opportunities had expanded dramatically, as the Council recognized that investing in young beings benefited entire civilizations. Most importantly, The casual violence that had characterized many interspecies interactions was now unthinkable. Sarah's reflection was interrupted by another communication, this one from the Xanthari Republic. The civil war that followed King Zixthera's death had ultimately resulted in the establishment of a democratic government that explicitly rejected the authoritarian traditions of the old monarchy. Chancellor Kovthara, one of the moderates who had helped establish the new government, appeared on screen. Despite bearing the same name suffix as the dead king, he was actually from a completely different family line. The Xanthari had adopted new naming conventions to distance themselves from royal heritage. Ambassador Chen, I have remarkable news. The Republic's Council has voted to establish a memorial fund in honor of your son. The Tommy Chen Foundation for Interspecies Friendship will provide educational exchanges for young beings across the galaxy. Sarah was surprised and touched. Chancellor, that's incredibly generous. But Tommy doesn't know about his role in recent history. We've kept those details from him. We understand. The memorial honors not what happened to him, but what he represents. The innocent desire to reach out and make friends across species barriers. We believe this embodies the best hopes for our galactic future. It was true. Despite everything that had followed, Tommy's original impulse to share his toy with alien children and make new friends had become a powerful symbol. Youth organizations across the galaxy now promoted Tommy's spirit, the idea that children naturally saw past differences of species, culture, and biology to recognize the fundamental similarities between all sapient beings. As the day ended, Sarah walked through the corridors of the embassy, noting the artwork that decorated the walls. Paintings and sculptures from dozens of species depicted scenes of children playing together, learning from each other, and exploring the wonders of a diverse universe. It was a vision that had emerged from tragedy, but had become the foundation of a new galactic civilization. She paused at her favorite piece, a holographic sculpture created by a young ethereal artist. It showed children from 7 different species holding hands in a circle, their forms shifting and changing to represent the beautiful diversity of sapient life. At the center was a small human boy holding a toy spaceship, offering it to anyone who wanted to share in his joy of discovery. Tommy found her there, having finished his homework and ready to head home to their apartment in the embassy residential sector. What are you looking at, Mom? Just thinking about friendship, Sarah replied, putting her arm around her son's shoulders. And how much courage it takes to reach out to someone different from yourself. Not that much courage, Tommy said with teenage certainty. People are just people, even when they don't look like people. Sil says her great-uncle was mean to everyone, but that doesn't mean all Xanthari are mean. You have to judge individuals, not whole groups. Sarah smiled at her son's wisdom. He understood something that had taken the galaxy centuries to learn, that individual actions defined character, not species membership or cultural background. As they walked home together, Sarah reflected on the strange series of events that had brought them to this point. A single moment of violence had revealed humanity's true nature to the galaxy. But more importantly, it had revealed the galaxy's capacity to learn, grow, and choose a better path forward. King Zixthera had intended his slap to be a lesson about knowing one's place in the galactic hierarchy. Instead, it had taught every species that children were precious, that violence against the innocent was unacceptable, and that some principles were worth fighting for regardless of the consequences. The galaxy was safer now, more protective of its most vulnerable members, not because of advanced technology or military might, but because one species had said no more to the casual brutality that had been accepted for too long. As Tommy chattered about his school projects and plans for the weekend, Sarah realized that this was the real victory. Not the elimination of a tyrant or the transformation of galactic politics, but the simple fact that her son could grow up in a universe where children of all species could play together safely, protected by the absolute commitment of every adult to their welfare. It was a future worth every difficult decision humanity had made. And it had all started with a little boy who just wanted to make friends.